Hi everybody in Research Methods. This is our last video for the semester, so my apologies, it's not a more interesting topic, reliability and validity. This would take up 2 class periods if we were in class, but since we're doing this remotely, we're going to make one video of the whole thing, section 18 and 19. Section 18, reliability and validity, but it's mostly over reliability. So here is the first part of it. We have to differentiate between these two terms. This occurred already in a previous chapter, but no harm in addressing it again. Reliability, the consistency of a given measurement. So, if nothing changed about your intelligence, which really it rarely does, you would score relatively the same time after time on such a measurement. Same thing with depression, anxiety, or anything else, assuming that nothing has changed about you. Validity is a very different question. Are we really measuring what we intend to measure? That is validity. So, could you have one without the other? You could have reliability without validity, but not the other way around. Let me explain because it's a test question. You could measure the same thing the same way and get the same result, and it could be wrong. Think about a broken clock. Gee, it gives you the same result, but it's not accurate except for twice a day, right? Same thing if we're measuring your intelligence and the scale just does not really measure how smart you are, how intelligent you are. It's reliable, but not valid. So, if you drive somewhere with a person to work and they pick you up at the same time every day, you split the driving between you maybe, that's a reliable person. You can count on that person to be there at the same time. Well, a reliable test, same results every time, assuming nothing has changed. 4 types of reliability. First one, test, retest. That's the most common and the most obvious. You take the test more than once, you get a very similar result. Maybe not exactly the same, but very similar. Test, retest. Second one, alternate or equivalent forms. What if you took Form A or Form B and you get almost the same score? That's reliability. They do this when you go get a driver's license, so you don't look around to see what other people are putting. College and high school instructors do this. If they're afraid people are going to cheat, you want different forms of the test to yield similar results, especially if the same person is taking it. Third one, split half and internal consistency. Maybe I want the odd numbers to equate to the even numbers. Maybe I want the first half to equate to the second half. With really long tests, this becomes important. Split half, internal consistency. Because otherwise people get bored. You're only measuring their state of mind rather than if they're really putting the most accurate answers. So that's another form of reliability. And then the fourth one, inter-rater. If we were in class together, I would say to the group, what kind of tests does a human grade you subjectively and have to be trained? It could be sports, it could be academics. Maybe you turned in an essay and 3 different teachers in high school graded it without seeing your name on it. That's inter-rater reliability, but plenty of sports do this too. Gymnastics, diving, figure skating, you get a score from the judge based on his or her perception. So if there's inter-rater reliability, you're getting a similar score based on the different judges, assuming that they are trained appropriately. Now, that is all you need to know for section 18. Even though it goes on for a few pages. It really just goes into more detail than that. So if you know that, you'll be good for the exam. And by the way, this doesn't come up much on your paper. You're not looking for a reliable paper, but you sure are looking for a valid research paper. So what a great segue into our last topic, section 19, validity. There are 4 categories of validity. Did you really measure what you thought you measured? And they are statistical conclusion. Did I use my statistics the right way? Internal validity. You probably remember this term. We've gone over it already. Did I make any mistakes in my study? Did anything happen between the beginning and the end that would alter my validity? Construct validity. Did I really measure depression like I thought I did, or anger, or happiness, or whatever? Did I measure the construct? And then the last one, external validity. Can I apply this to anyone else, or is it only true for the people in my study? Now, here's the bad news. There's a bunch of them on here. 17, 19 of them. You do need to know all of them. But the good news is, it's open book, open note, isn't it? You're going to have to do some matching. You might want to practice on assignment number 10. That will be under assignments in the Canvas page for us. Or you might just want to look them over first too. It's up to you what order you do it in. So, statistical conclusion validity. Remember type 2 error? You didn't use enough people, you didn't have enough statistical power, not enough sample size. That is the first one, low statistical power. Under the same column here, violated the assumptions of the statistical test. That's kind of obvious. Did I do a t-test when I should have done a correlation? Did I do a multiple regression when I should have done an analysis of variance? That's a problem when you use the wrong statistic. Fishing and the error rate problem. Think about fishing. I don't know if any of you fish. Personally, I don't. But anyway, if you cast your line out there enough, you're going to catch something. Well, that's where this comes from. Too many comparisons. You're going to get validity statistical somehow, but does it really mean anything? Is it really accurate? If you make so many comparisons, it's hard to tell whether that was just a coincidence or if it really has meaning. Fourth one, reliability of treatment implementation. It matters. Did you give people the medicine in person? Did you mail it to them? Did you drop it off at their doorstep? Was the counseling done in hour-long sessions or over one full day? It really matters how you implement whatever treatment you're giving. So all of those things lead to the question, did I use my statistics the right way and come up with meaningful results? Second column, internal validity. This is the longest one. There's 7 of them, 7 threats. You ready? First one, history. What if something happened between the beginning and the end of my study? Now, you're just giving out a survey to people and it takes 5 minutes? Probably not going to be a problem. But what if you're doing a year-long program for drug abuse or mental illness or something, or exercise? The longer your study goes on, the more history could be a problem. In other words, did you have something occur, extraneous variable, remember that, between the beginning and the end of the study? Actually, confounding variable would explain that as well. Extraneous is usually before the study starts, but confounding is sure relevant here, isn't it? Next one, maturation. Maybe the people in your study are just getting older. Not maybe, they are. But if it's a long study, maybe that explains it. For example, perhaps in children, they are learning how to read because, well, their brains are just developing. Maybe it has nothing to do with the program you put into place. With the elderly, maybe they're declining because of their age over a year. Maybe it has nothing to do with your intervention. Testing. Sometimes people act in a certain way because they've seen the test before. So if you're doing a test-retest kind of model, that could be the reason rather than you truly having validity. Maybe they're reacting to the fact that they've seen the test already. Statistical regression. Think of the mean, the average, being like a magnet. Things get pulled to it. So, If you get a 98 on an exam and you can retake it, maybe you shouldn't, because the mean pulls things toward the average. So therefore, you're likely to go more in the direction of average. Whereas if you did really poorly and you can take the exam over again, you probably should, because the mean is like a magnet. Things and people and sports teams, and I could go on, tend to get more average over time. It's a weird phenomenon. Next one, mortality. What do you do with people who dropped out of your study? If you're doing a study on counseling for drug abuse, did people who stopped coming get better, or did they, what we call, fall off the wagon? They got worse. It's hard to tell what to make of people who don't stick with your study. Are you giving a survey out to people for 5 minutes? It's not going to be a problem. But the longer the study goes on, people will drop out and you don't quite know what to make of it or why. Next one, actually 6 and 7 go together. Compensatory rivalry, resentful demoralization. If you have two groups, one of them gets the treatment, the other one doesn't, especially if it's a desirable independent variable. Hey, like cupcakes or something like that, doesn't that sound good? What if the other group finds out that they did not get that reward or incentive? Are they going to be demoralized and give up, or are they going to be resentful and more competitive? Compensatory rivalry is number 6. They're going to try even harder to show up that group that got the good stuff. They got money, they got food, whatever it is. Or number 7, resentful demoralization. You give up, you're not even going to try. How come that group got good stuff and we didn't? So 6 and 7 go together. Third category, construct validity. Did I even measure the construct that I thought I measured? Again, whether it's depression, love, anger, happiness, did I really measure what I thought I measured? Here are the 6 potential problems or threats. 1, inadequate pre-operational explication of constructs. What else needs to be said, right? Just kidding. That is very complicated. Put simply, operational definition. If you did not define what it is that you're talking about, well, how can you know if you measured it? If I'm saying my test is on happiness, I better give a good solid definition of what I mean by that. Love, I better give a good definition of what that means. Resentment, I better give a good definition too. In class, we talked about affiliation. That's a term some people don't even know what the word means. Other people will define it differently than someone else. Well, you need a good definition. Second one, monomethod bias. A perfect example of this is anxiety, worry, stress, dread. How do you measure that? Physiologically, heartbeat or sweaty palms? Do you measure it with a person's thinking? Do you measure it with their behavior, like they're pacing back and forth or wringing their hands? You might need more than one way to measure it. How do I measure what's a good student? What's a motivated athlete? I want more than one way to measure it, sometimes, if I want to avoid the monomethod bias, threat to validity. Hypothesis guessing. Is it too easy to guess what the hypothesis is? Some of you who asked me for help on your surveys, I already gave you this answer. If your topic was, I think video games make people angry, and survey question number 1 is, video games make me angry. Well, you just gave it away. You need to find a way to ask several questions and kind of get to that point. If people can guess what you're looking for, it really does ruin the construct that you were trying to measure. Fourth one, evaluation apprehension. If we were in class together, I would ask you for examples of what people might not tell you the truth about or might not want to be studied about in the first place. Is it their sexual behavior? For some people, even their sexual orientation. I like to think we're moving past that as a society, but you might not get honest answers out of people. It might be their criminal behavior, they don't want to admit to it. It might be private thoughts or feelings they have. Evaluation, apprehension. You have to be wary of that because you might not be measuring what you think you measure if people are apprehensive about participating. Number 5, experimenter expectancies. Have you ever heard of blind studies or double blind studies? Sometimes it's better if the experimenter does not know who's getting the placebo, who is in group A or group B, because you might be biased and your expectations might influence the group. And number 6, remember we talked about within group studies where you do a before, after again, after that? That's number 6 on construct validity. Interaction of different treatments. Are you giving people a diet and then they later take medicine and then they later start exercising? It's hard to tell which one had the long-term effect, or maybe all of them. Last topic, external validity. Does this apply to people outside of my study or only the people who took my survey or participated in my experiment? Here's the 2 threats to validity. Interaction of selection or setting. What's the difference? Selection is the people that I picked. Assuming that I can't get truly random people, that's very difficult to do. Maybe the selection was the problem. Was it just my friends or my classmates, people at church, people at work? Maybe it's not random people. Number 2, the setting. Did you do it indoors or outdoors? Was it a religious setting or a political setting? Was it an educational environment or was it a retail environment? The setting can make a difference. Could both of those things be a problem? Absolutely. If we were in class, we would talk a little bit about the state fair. A lot of studies are done there on consumer behavior, and the selection is kind of a cool aspect to that because so many different kinds of people go to the state fair. Young, old, rich, poor, all kinds of people. However, the setting is a bit of a problem. You might act differently and respond differently if you are looking at everything related to the state fair compared to if you went to some office or clinic. So, if you know those things, you will be good to go for the test. Section 20 in your reading packet, we went over this when we did section 10. We also looked at section 20, examples of the paper. So this is the last thing you're going to actually hear and see me talking about with you. That paper is due May 23rd. A lot of you have never used a program like Vassar-Stats. I would highly recommend that you email me, Canvas message me, and yes, even call me. My phone number is in the syllabus, and I am happy to walk you through it and help you. We're going to make this work, and I want you to turn in a great paper by the deadline so that you can get the best possible grade. That's it. Take care and keep in touch.